Thanks for joining us, Mary.
Thank you, Roger.
I'd like to start by asking you how being Mary Walsh is different now than when you began to be Mary Walsh.
Like May 13th, 1952. uh, this is I've been having a hard old go lately. Like when you came in today and I was talking about my health, you said, well, I guess it's interesting to be paying for stuff you got away with for so long. And I guess in a way, and I have been very lucky in my whole life, like I've just been lucky. And in my career, particularly, like always seemed to get in with a good crowd, and ideas I had people wanted the ideas that I had. And I'm at that stage in my career where everything I do, like all the ideas I send in or things it's all, nobody wants them. And so it's like, I could, just lie down and weep, I suppose, which I tell you the truth, I have done. So it's a strange thing to be 60 and to have worked and been so lucky to have worked successfully and to be, and to have had ideas that then came to fruition so it's just a matter of, I guess they say there's mountains and valleys, and so at this point, I'm in a bit of a valley, and so it all seems to be coming together. Like my health kind of went blooch there, and then my career and everything seems to be I'm valleying. So that's the difference. Yeah, I was all like when I was born, May 13th, 1952. I was 12 pounds 8 ounces, and the nurses at St. Clair's called me the queen of the nursery. So I came out kind of big, and so I'm in a bit of a.
Is it harder to be an actor and a writer now than when you were
For me, it is. For me, it is, for sure. I don't know what it's like in a general way. I think that, the amount of Canadian stuff that's produced, it certainly hasn't rocketed, has it? I mean, if you think about, in my time, the Canadian government insisted that Canadian radio play Canadian music. Well, the racket rose right across the country. People said, that's it. That's the end of radio in the country. We'll never be able to do that. How can we play Canadian music? There is no Canadian music, blah, 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 blah. And everyone said, everybody talked about, fascist government policy and stuff like that. And yet people played, 40% of what they playlist was Canadian music, or 30%, I don't remember what it is, you may know better than I, or 60. But whatever happened, Canadian music just grew and blossomed, and that hasn't happened with Canadian film or Canadian television. I mean, Bell, who are the people you work for, I don't know how much Canadian stuff they're interested in producing. We have a very small population base and a huge geographic mass, and they do very well on 2.5 Men. Men, 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 manly men, men, men. I know the song. Did you ever watch satellite TV? It's just the same thing over and over again. It's NTV News, CTV News, 2.5 Men, NTV News, CTV News, CBC Winnipeg. It's like there's 500, but it's all 5 things. It's all 2.5 Men and CBC News. That's it. Anyway, I was around the Bay doing a movie, and I just noticed that satellite. I'm glad I don't have satellite TV. Is it bad for me to be saying anti-satellite TV things on Bell?
I don't think so.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
When you started out in Codco, this
Yes.
was back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
You worked with a group of people, all of who have seemed to go on to do really interesting things. Andy Jones, Greg Malone, Bob Joy in New York, Kathy Jones. I can't think of another Newfoundland creative enterprise, if I could call it that has been like that. Was there something like Rick Mercer came out of a theater group, but the others, I don't even remember who they were.
Andrew Younghusband is on TV. He does, the worst driver in Canada. He does the worst handyman in Canada. He's had those stations, like I guess it's HGTV, or those stations that are not CBC or CTV. And Christine is part of that group too. And another group I'd like to mention is like the dance party. Like Johnny Harris is on Murdoch Mysteries. Steve Cochran has a career in writing. Sherry White is on Rookie Blue. Blue. She's doing really well. Adriana Maggs's film was at Sundance. You know, of course, Sherry and Adriana weren't actually in that group,
Then
but they're all part of the same crowd, you know?
the premise of my question is wrong, but it raises another question. I was going to say, what was it about Codco? Was it the times? But
Yeah.
maybe the question is there something in the water here that...
Well, you know, Rex Murphy, who's never been kind to us for sure, said that if Codco hadn't happened, it would have had to happen anyway because the time was right for it in some sort of way. That we were that first generation, I guess, of Canadians. But really, you know, 1952, it was only 3 years after we joined Canada, and everybody in my milieu growing up, it's funny to call it that, but everybody around me had all been anti-Confederate because they were all townies, Catholic townies. So, you know, I grew up thinking that Canada was slightly substandard, like Canadian goods were no good, and the Americans were very generous, and the Canadians were just mean. Those were the stories that came out of the war here, and our sense of ourselves was so, you know, the Canadians and Canada. I mean, I really feel like a Canadian now, but it took me a long time. And I guess that's what happens. It takes a while, doesn't it, to adjust. But I think when we first joined, everybody treated us like we had come from somewhere, you know, like people were always asking the question, you know, what is a Canadian? You know, Canadians were really confounded for a long time in the 70s and the 60s as to what a Canadian was. And we always used to think, well, you know, we know what a Canadian is. It's that crowd who think they're so much better than us, you know, like, you know. And so there was no question of who you know, we kept thinking, why are they asking this question? So it was difficult being a Newfoundlander because we sort of were Canada's laughingstock for a long time, right? So I guess what Rex Murphy meant is that we were educated and there was some money around and we were part of a larger culture, and that we would, you know, that it sprung out of that. It sprung out of not belonging, of being outside and yet inside, which is, you know, when you look at all the Canadian comedians that are in the States, it's like you access all that American culture, but you're not really part of it. So you're always slightly back from it. So you're always seeing it's easier to satirize and make fun of because you're not really part of it, but you're exposed to it all the time. And I suppose that in a way that's what we were like in you know, in those early days in Codco.
In those early days in Codco, I think it's right. Everybody was excited just to be having gigs,
Yeah,
and writing stuff. Now it's intellectual property lawyers, agents. I presume you're Mary Walsh Incorporated or something like
no,
that.
Torbay Pony. Torbay Pony.
Torbay Pony?
Yeah.
Okay.
We always had a manager, or no, we didn't always have. Yes, we always had a manager right from the beginning, not from the very, very beginning, but we had a series of different managers and then another manager. But when we started This Hour is 22 Minutes, I kind of negotiated with Salter Street for everyone, for everybody's contract. For some reason or other, I don't know. Sometimes I think, wow, I was really stunned, and I really was. But because we were really glad to be doing it. Of course we were. Like, I remember when we first started, I remember Rick Mercer did a little dance and singing, you know, we've got a national TV show, and we got a national TV show. And I remember thinking, oh, Christ, we've got a national TV show. Now we're going to have to. This is really bad. No good will come of this. And, you know, over time, of course, I think that I've gotten a little less scared of everything all the time. But I have an agent. I ended up having an agent because Shirley Douglas said, "Oh, darling, you're going to have an agent." And I also have an accountant because Shirley said, "Oh, darling, you're going to have to pay income tax. You can't keep going this way. You're absolutely, you know, you're going to prison next." And so really, thanks be to God for Shirley Douglas. And so I have to say thank you to Tommy Douglas for creating Shirley Douglas. And so she sort of saved my fiscal life over all these years. I'd still be without her. But anyway.
Does all of that, the lawyers and the accountants and the agents, does that
I don't have any lawyers, you know.
Does it get in between you and your work?
No, you know, I wish. No, I don't think so. I mean, that's interesting, Roger. I think what got in between me and my work maybe was success may have been, you know, because, you know, success is pretty good and you want more success. And you may forget along the way how it was that you got success or what it was that you did or what it was that you loved. And you think, I just have to have some more success because that's what I need to do. And so I think I kind of got lost for a while. And so it's not agents or lawyers or anything. I think it is just this. It's that you want to be, you want to be on TV and you want to be in a successful show, as opposed to like when I had the idea to do this hour's 22 minutes. I thought that we were going to change things. I thought we could do a satiric show that would be on every week that would make a difference in the country, right? That we would call people to task for what they were doing, and, things would change. And, but by the time I started, in the last, say, 5 or 6 years, by the time I started coming up with ideas for other shows, I was thinking, well, what do people want to see? What will they, what will people, it's a much more conservative place we're in now than we were 20 years ago anyway, as you know. That's true. So it's not just my own failure to keep doing what I need to do. It is also that the environment, you have to live in the world you're in, right? Good God. But sometimes I do feel that success makes you lose sight of what it is that made you successful in the first place, right?
Are you working as much as you want? Or would you like to work less?
I like to work more. Yeah, no, I would like to work more for sure. I really feel like in Canadian television right now, we don't have anything that's like, okay, we'll go way back, like to The Sopranos, or now Breaking Bad, or like The Wire, or any of those shows that cable has had. And so, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to create a show like that. I'd like to create a show like that, be part of a show like that, write on a show like that, anything like a show that was really, really good. That, because now when you think about TV, like you used to think about film, like film seems to be all crap that used to be on TV, like, just big things blowing up and nothing goes on. And it's not, but they're creating these TV shows that are like Russian novels, like, you get deeper and deeper into the characterization as you go along, and you're amazed at what's happening. So I'd like to, I'd like to be part of something like that. So I don't know how I'm ever going to go about that or anything. I have no plans. There's nothing, afoot. I'm writing a novel now. I have a contract with HarperCollins, and I find that really, really hard because really I know that all I've got written now has got to be thrown out, and I've got to start again because I came to the point where I realized that all the stuff I wrote wasn't what I was wanting to write, and I don't know if I have the guts to throw it out the window, you know what I mean? Because it's something I've wanted to do since I was 14, never had the guts to do, then just did it. And, my agent got me a meeting with HarperCollins, and they contracted me to do it. And I was supposed to have the first draft to them by January the 1st, but then I got sick. So anyway, so there you go. And I did a one-woman show, which I'm taking on the road now. And that's something I never wanted to do because, like you talked about Codco, and I talked about all those people who were in and around the Newfoundland dance party and stuff. Like they were on Hatching, Matching, and Dispatching, which is the favorite thing I've ever done in my whole life. And they were all part of that. And I love working with people. It's just like and so writing a novel is profoundly, and doing a one-woman show. I mean, both of the things I'm up to now, they're both lonely pursuits. When you're doing a one-woman show, you're out there, you're not feeding, the audience is feeding you, of course. But, I could do a show with Andy, and I could be, and like I just did it with Brendan Gleeson. Like I was playing the scene in an angry way, and he just laughed. And so, of course, you couldn't not pick up the energy that the other person was giving you. And so it changed the whole thing for me. And so with other people, you're just constantly living off them in a way, like it's giving you all this stuff. And when you're by yourself, you're just you and the audience, I guess. And on film, just you and nobody if you were by yourself.
How might your career have been different had you kind of yielded to the temptation to move to Toronto, to move to Los Angeles? live away from Newfoundland?
I never, I've never admitted this before, and I guess it's probably not the time to admit it now. But I don't think I have the guts, really, because I was a very fearful person. I was just afraid of everything. I gave up going on vacation because my drinking was so overwhelming to me that really that I had any success at all is quite remarkable. It just shows that I have an enormous will and strength somewhere. Because, but I did, I stopped going on vacation because it's too dangerous to go on vacation. You're drinking like I was drinking, let alone move to Los Angeles. Holy Christ. So by the time I gave up drinking, that was 1992, we were just starting This Hour is 22 Minutes. So, then I went on from there. But I would like to, right now, I would like to move to Los Angeles now because there's nowhere, I seem to be like there's nowhere I can go. So I wouldn't mind trying a new place where there's no, I wouldn't be afraid like to talk to people or to be turned down. And it wouldn't hurt me if people said, oh, you're way too old and just not the right kind of look at all for us. I would be okay with that now, but I know I couldn't have taken that when I was 20. I just, you know what I mean? We created all our own work. We never went out and asked anybody to say, are we okay? Do I look all right? Every day you go to an audition as an actress. I just suddenly filled up thinking of all those actresses out there trying, because I hardly ever went to an audition, never in my life. We just created our own work and then we did it. And if you wanted to, and on the Codco TV show, if you wanted to look like a beautiful girl, you'd ask Bev Scheckman just to put a whole shitload of makeup on you and a great big wig and you'd go out and pretend you were a beautiful girl. You know what I mean? So I think that other stuff, I didn't have the stuff for that. I just didn't.
I was just reading an article in the New York Times Magazine about Neil Young, who has a book coming out, so he's inviting people to his ranch, and he invited this guy, and Neil Young has been sober for a year now.
Yes.
And he said, he said, I don't know how to connect to myself anymore.
Yeah. I know that's interesting, eh? And certainly for the first couple of years I was sober, it was very difficult for sure. But if one day at a time, if I stay sober, I'll be sober 20 years. So, I'm coming up on almost being sober as long as I was drinking. So it's a whole other life. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I want to come back to something you said about 22 Minutes, the kind of show you wanted it to be. I always thought it was like a news program, but it was the television equivalent of the editorial page cartoon.
Yeah, remember on British TV that they used to have that was the way that the week that was, and they had a girl who used to sing a song. That was what my vision was. It's not a very, I must say, it's not remarkably out there, but that was my vision, that we would do something like that because I loved that. When I was in high school, I used to watch that on TV. I guess I don't know what station it was on or anything. And I remember I used to think we'd get Ron Hines to come on every week and write a song about the news of the week and stuff. But anyway, it evolved into what it was, which definitely was. We were going to have a number of different news desks. We were going to have correspondents all across the country. We were going to have, so many ideas, were there at the beginning. And then it evolved into what it is. It is like the editorial cartoon. And for a while there, it kind of fell off the thing and became more like a sketch show. And then, but it's come back again now to being more political satire, I think.
It's 20 years old.
Yeah, 20 years old. Yeah, so, yeah.
That's a long run in Canadian television.
Yes.
I'm trying to think what it would compare to.
Well, I guess Front Page Challenge, but that went for 38 years. And I would be Betty Kennedy.
Not a bad thing to be.
No,
I always liked Betty Kennedy.
Is it too late for me to marry a diplomat from Chile or somewhere? Didn't she marry someone from... Anyway, never mind.
Coming back to then, now, at what point did you realize that being Mary Walsh is what you're going to be? You're not going to be a school teacher. You're not going to sell insurance. You're going to be who you become. Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be a journalist.
Well, you kind of are.
Yeah, in a way. That's why This Hour is 22 Minutes was such a good fit for me, because I got to play a journalist on TV. But that's what I really wanted to be.
And there are a lot of people playing journalists on TV.
Yeah.
Just not on comedy shows.
That's right. Not on comedy, unfortunately. Whatever happened to journalism? How did it lose its balls completely? It just seems like Wow, and they hate that show Newsroom that Aaron Sorkin wrote, and maybe sometimes it is a bit sucky and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's such an interesting idea that here's a guy who asks a person a question, and then if the person just gives them the answer, like say the conservatives give now, like that the NDP is all for a carbon tax, no matter what the question is, they say that he won't let them get away with it. He just keeps asking the question again, and you think, well, that must have been the way they did it one time. But not anymore, I guess. Now it's totally different. The fifth estate, or is it the fourth estate? Which estate is journalism?
I'm going to apologize because I distracted you from the question.
Yeah. Sorry.
So what point did you figure out this is it?
Well, it was after I'd been working on Here and Now as a researcher for a year.
Which is a separate hour television show.
Separate hour television show in Newfoundland.
CBC, yeah.
And I was in with, like Andy and Greg and Bob and Tommy and Diane and Kathy and stuff. And they were all moving to Toronto. And I really don't know why I didn't go into journalism or try to get into journalism at Ryerson. I just think I didn't have good marks in school. And I guess I don't know if I thought this. Maybe this is the first time I've ever said this. I don't know if it's true. Maybe I thought I couldn't get into the journalism course at Ryerson. So I went to the theater course at Ryerson. I got in, I had to audition. Terrible audition. I have no idea why they let me in. I think because I spoke well or something. But anyway, I got in there, and everybody else went. Andy and Bob went off to England, and Greg and Tommy and Diane and Kathy were all in Toronto. And Diane and Tommy went to Theatre Passe Muraille to Paul Thompson, who's an extraordinary guy. And he gave him. They wanted to audition for a show, and so he gave him $300 and said, "Write your own show," And so that's what we did. And they asked me to be part of it, and I was going to school at the time, and I did. And then I quit because I thought it would distract me too much. And you weren't allowed to act while you're going to acting school because you might pick up bad things. And so I quit for a while, and then I luckily went back and quit school and just came home with Codco and Cod on a Stick, and we did a tour of the island.
And hey presto, no turning back.
Yeah.
How did being a mother change being Mary Walsh Inc.?
Well, I guess the first 12 years of Jesse's life, I guess, were some of the happiest years of my entire life. It also went along with, a really good time in Halifax and a really, I guess getting sober. Jesse, the two best things I have to say that I ever did in my life was having Jesse and getting sober. So I guess I would think that if those two things hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have been able to go on being an actor and a writer and a performer. I probably would have gone the other way because there is an inevitable path, isn't there, to drinking that takes you down certain roads and that you just can't, like people always say, Dorothy Parker, she's so funny. Why did she write nothing for the last 20 years? Because she was loaded for the last 20 years of her life. You know what I mean? And it just happens to you. And then poor old John Cheever, like writing these great novels, and then the time that he could write before he had to drink became shorter and shorter, and then he stopped writing altogether, and then he died. But and of course we all die. But I think that it would have been impossible to keep going. It would have been impossible to do this hour's 22 minutes because it was a weekly show, and so we wrote every week, and we performed a live show every Friday night. So, yeah.
When I became a parent. I think that's when the realization settled on me that I wasn't indestructible. And then I got impatient. I didn't want to waste my time anymore.
Ah.
So I kind of focused in ways that I hadn't before that. I'd always kind of taken things for granted.
Yeah. I always admire people who come to realizations and stuff. It's like 10 years after the fact, I go, oh, that's what happened then. I get it. You know what I mean? It's like, I've always been one of those people who wants to keep going at an enormous speed forward and not think, is this the right, whatever is in front of me, I want to go, you know? And so to have that kind of, I may get it before I die, that kind of thing of like, oh, I see. Oh, I'm not indestructible. Oh, I'm, like, I don't want to waste time. I want to be doing, here I am, this is what I want to do. I'm not sure that that's, has been part of my, that hasn't been my strong suit for sure, being thoughtful.
If I ask you in the time we have left, if I ask you to talk about your novel, does that ruin trying to write your novel?
No.
What's the novel about?
The novel is about a woman, it starts off a young woman, she's only 16, she goes off to Expo with a choir called Our Lady of Mercy Choir, which just happens to be the same, but a choir I never got in, by the way, because Sister Mary Catherine Bellamy realized that the problem in the altos, which she'd been saying for months, there's a problem in the altos, was in fact me. And so she kicked me out and I never got to go to Expo. But anyway, my heroine gets to go to Expo and she gets knocked up. It's like 1967 and, she goes up with her plaits and stuff like that. And then she gets involved in all that. And she comes home and has the baby and, goes back to high school and, does all that kind of stuff and lives out and has quite a rocky kind of road. And then I don't know. Like right now in the novel, she's in this relationship that is a very violent relationship that she can't get out of, even though she doesn't have any children, even though she's not financially dependent on this other person. It's like there's some part of her character that just won't let go. She's going to turn this around. She's going to fix this. She is going to control this, even though every day, she's, down at the bottom of the stairs with, part of her ear torn off. She, like there's something relentless about her. And that's as far as I am now. Yeah.
What's the working title?
It's called Crying for the Moon.
Sounds like you're writing about your life.
Well, not really about my life, but I suppose that the character of being relentlessly going forward and thinking that you can change everything might have something to do with my character, I suppose. You know what I mean? But she doesn't seem like, so many things about her don't seem like me. But I suppose, as I was telling you that little piece there, I thought, yeah, that would be a lot like me, I guess. That inability to kind of, to say, no, this is no good, this is not right, but not to say I'm going to, close that door and walk away, but to say I'm going to stay with this until I make this right. Where does that
That sounds
come
like
from?
that sounds like the perfect ending. Stay with this until you make it right.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for inviting us to your home.
Okay.
Really pleasure to talk
Thanks,
with you
Roger.
again.
Is it the time gone?
Yeah.
When I talk, I just lose track of the time.
Great.